You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, November 20th, and I'm joined with Weston to celebrate another Victory Monday. How you doing today, Weston?
It's Victory Monday, Steph. Mondays seem to be a little bit easier. The clouds are a little less. The sky's a little brighter. Work goes by fast. I'm great. I'm fantastic. I can't wait to dive into tonight.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, it's always great when the 49ers win another one. It kind of seemed like this was a different type of win than maybe we had seen in the past with the 49ers. I only say that because it kind of felt like it was interesting at some points where like the game kind of felt too close. So I don't know if this was, maybe just them trying to get a taste of an ugly type of win. But again, a win is a win. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, I'm just speaking the facts. And I think it was mostly in the first half because the 49ers were making just some, kind of, I don't want to say mistakes, but they were just doing things that kept the Bucs hanging around. And I pointed it out at halftime. I think Brock got sacked like 3 times in the first half. They were 1 of 3 in the red zone in the first half. There were 3 of 6. They had 5 penalties in the first half. So all those things helped contribute to the Bucs kind of like hanging around, I think, right? But at the end of the day, the 49ers got the job done. So who are we to complain, right?
Yeah. I think it didn't start well, especially with the opening drive, which has tend to been like when you're in Kyle's first 24 plays, those scripted 12 runs, 12 passes that he usually has, the offense seems to hum, right? And then like fizzles out a little bit, and that wasn't necessarily the case. They got back on track, and I think they picked up all the momentum with that drive right before the half, and that carried into the second half, and that was proved to be enough. But I do agree that the game, even in the second half, I would argue there were moments where like, why does this still feel like a game? Like we were just up 20 points a moment ago. And I know we're up 13 right now, and that's 2 full possessions, but it feels a lot closer than, the score would indicate. But we'll talk about it, like things that could have gone differently and changed the complexion of the game.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I think struck out to me was just that the offense seemed to be back to its old ways, and that was pretty much where they had left off the week prior, right? So I mean, they continue to stay hot. Maybe it didn't score 30 points, but they scored 27, and Brock Purdy and a lot of these playmakers had a big involvement in that. So it really felt like they were back to looking like themselves, right?
Yeah. 2 weeks in a row, the offense looked good. I don't want to steal too much thunder, but I think Brock played his best game as a professional this past weekend.
Yeah.
I'd even lobby the for a second week. 14 points is nothing to sneeze at in the NFL, right? If that's what you're giving up. And I know people be like, oh, it's Baker Mayfield at quarterback. But like Rachaad White's no slouch. Mike Evans is certainly no slouch. Chris Godwin is certainly no slouch. They've been getting a lot of production from the tight ends as of late. And I think there were opportunities for the defense to put this game away. And they didn't, but the plays were there to be had, right? Like a Fred Warner dropped interception, a Dre Greenlaw dropped interception, even the Tashawn Gibson dropped interception in the end zone. Those plays, 2 of them go the opposite way, and maybe it's a 21, 28 point type W versus the 13-point W that it was.
Yeah, the 49ers are back on top when it comes to opponent points per game. They're averaging just 15.7. That's about where they started the season, right? Like They were at the top of that. They slipped a bit, during those losses. But they're back on top, which and the eye test certainly tells us the same for this defense. So it just kind of looks like they're getting back to form. And we talked about some of the things that they did that maybe contributed to the Bucs hanging around, but it almost felt like at the same time, I was just talking about this with the Ashley right before we went live. that it kind of felt like they know that if they're on their best game, no one can beat them, and the only person that can beat them is themselves. So if they're making their mistakes, the they're really helping the other opponent, right? The team right across from them. But if they just like focus and they don't let that rattle them, like it kind of seemed to rattle them during the losses, pick it back up, get back in focus, and this game is yours. And that's what they did in this game. That was kind of the difference from one of the other losses that we had seen from this team. It kind of felt like, nah, like we're not gonna let you like get back in this. So while it did feel close at times, it was like them kind of remembering who they were in this game.
Yeah. I think these last two games, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, I certainly expected the Jacksonville game to be a much closer competition. I didn't expect that the Bucs would give them a more difficult time than the Jaguars would, but these are the tune-up games coming out of the bye where you need to get hot because you look at the stretch coming right now over the next, 4 or 5 games. This is it, right? This is the tell all. This is the peek behind the curtain as to what this team really is as they're making a playoff push. And one thing that I think you talked about, Steph, that like finding their identity and doing what they do well, and when they're clicking on all cylinders, they're a really hard team to beat, right? They have to beat themselves versus the other team beating them. There's still like one piece missing for me since the losing started, and even returning to the winning ways. The run game just feels like struggle bus, right? And that's when they put people away, is when they can just grind out the fourth quarter, impose their will, take your desire to want to finish this game, out on their defense. And it's just, it's been lacking. And I think it's directly attributed to like the O-line just feels a little bit more deficient than potentially it was at the start of the season. But if they get that even resembling what it was in weeks 1 through 5, Whitbrock playing this way, the passing game humming, Kittle involved, I don't know what team in the NFL can actually stop them. I don't. I believe that, and I'm like the most critical and cynical of my team, and it's that run game, and that's the true identity of what they want to do, and that just has not been there as of late.
I do hear you. Like it does. Certainly, it's been better since the bye week and during those losses, because they didn't have Trent, because they didn't have Debo. But yeah, it hasn't been like Christian McCaffrey breaking off like a 50-yard gain, right? Like we were seeing before. That's kind of been missing. I kind of wonder if part of that has to do with just the way that maybe opposing defenses have adjusted to the 49ers run game as well. And I think a lot of the strategy for a lot of opposing teams is to force Brock Purdy to throw the football, right? Let's see what he can do. He threw some turnovers during those losses. Let's see if we can get him to do it again, kind of thing, right? So I think they're kind of just kind of forcing that game plan a little bit for the 49ers, but it hasn't been as bad as as it was during the losses. So you can hang your hat on that. But I'm just trying to pull up really quickly his efficiency. Yeah, so 3.7 yards per attempt yesterday for Christian McCaffrey. And I recall there was the 4th and 1 where they tried to convert on a McCaffrey run and they couldn't get it. That was weird, right?
Can we talk about that play for a second?
I was just gonna say, like, the Bucs do have a good run defense, right? They have Vita Vea, run stuffer in the middle. That's kind of tough. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it.
I think they have an underrated defensive line, and it starts with big old Vita in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that man is an anchor. But more specifically on that 4th down, I might be in the minority here in this belief, but where we were, time remaining on the clock, what you're up, what that equates to, number of possessions, I understand you get the 1st down, you feel pretty confident you put that game away, but why are you not punting that ball? I just don't understand why you're not punting that and making them go the field twice. You got to, they need touchdowns, right? There's not a field goal to check. And now with a shortened clock, yes, you want to believe that you're confident enough that you're going to go get that yard, right? But at the end of the day, like, you don't. they got half the field to go. They can eat that up in 30, 35 seconds. And then the offense was stalling out a little bit there. So when they kick it back off to you, you go 3 and out. All of a sudden, this team's got the ball with 2.5 minutes left to go, and they're down 6. They're not even down 7, right? I understand, right? The confident fan, the confident coaches, and the confident players say, I want the ball in my hand. But like, if you step outside of that chasm for a moment, it's like, just punt the ball. Don't get cute there. Just punt the ball. Make them have to go 80 yards twice, right? Like to win. That's just my belief. Like, I think you got to punt the ball there.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it was Christian, like, really making a case for himself to Kyle? Like,
totally.
I kind of feel like Christian has a way with Kyle a little bit. Like, he kind of asked to do anything. Like, I don't think he had to ask to try to get the record at the end of last week's game. But, I do think that he keeps him out there a lot, and I think a lot of that has to do with because Christian wants to be out there. Like, totally. You could see him when they pan to him on the sideline when he's not out there. He's like, he looks angry. So I don't know if that's kind of the case, and maybe Kyle wanted to give him that shot, but I don't know. Hopefully we see the run game, look a little bit better in these coming weeks, and certainly against the Seahawks, because I don't think the Seahawks have as great of a defense when it comes to defending the run.
No, I mean, Bobby Wagner can still play, but he's aging, right? Yeah, you brought in Leonard Williams, I know, but they're still, I fear them more when the ball's in the air. I think they're opportunistic in the secondary, and they got some playmakers there. But this is one of those games on a short week. Like, there's no better winning formula on a Thursday night football game, division game, rivalry game, than running the football and running it well and just beating them up when your body's on short recovery, short rest. And I agree with you. I'm sure McCaffrey was on the sideline lobbying, like, we're going, or like in that whatever, like lobbying for this. It reminds me of like the Cowboys Niners game from 21 where Debo, right? You've seen all those clips. Debo, Kyle. And he's like, in there, we're going to put them. And you want that swagger, but the job as the head coach every once in a while is to protect the player from themselves. Like, that's still your job, it's in the description. So I might be in the minority, but I just think, what were we looking at? 3.5 minutes, almost 4 minutes left in the game. Just punt the ball. Don't get cute there. Just punt the ball, my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. There was no reason for that. So yeah, hopefully Kyle maybe learned his lesson from that. But we got one more thing that I wanted to talk about before we get into the candidates for 49K Player of the Week, and that is the Talanoa Hufanga injury. And as we know, it was confirmed earlier today by Kyle Shanahan that Hufanga suffered a torn ACL. Fortunately, it's just an ACL, and there isn't any other damage to any other ligaments in the knee. But that's a tough blow, obviously, not just for Hufanga, but for, the 49ers. And it's unfortunate. Next year, he's going to be playing for a contract, right? So I know it's a long time from now looking ahead, but, just hope that Hufanga has a great recovery and can come back stronger from it. But as far as the implications that it has for this season, I mean, we're talking about how tough the schedule is about to get for the 49ers, right? And not having Hufanga as part of that, this could be a different look for the defense in these next, few games. We're going to find out what it looks like with Jair Brown. Jair Brown had a pretty strong finish. I'm sure we'll talk more extensively about that in a bit, but what are you feeling about Talanoa Hufanga injury and how, as a whole, like, it impacts this defense?
I mean, listen, when you're at this point in the season, you're making this type of push and you have the expectations that your team has, you want every piece of the puzzle there and present with you. And who doesn't love Huff's style of play and his excitement and his energy? Like, he's just a fan favorite. So, of course, we're all sour on that. I know he was an all-pro last year. Again, I might be in the minority, but I don't, the play and the results this year aren't the same as they were last year. And maybe that's a difference in how they're utilized. I feel like he's not playing as close to the line of scrimmage as he did last year, which is his strength, versus being in coverage. He's had a couple of opportunistic big plays. It's a loss, and it's a loss that will be felt. And I don't I don't say what I'm about to say to minimize the injury, because I do think there's going to be some impact to, a secondary that's arguably the weakest link on the defensive side of the ball. But losing Hufanga is not the same thing as losing Nick Bosa, as losing Fred Warner, even though they all have all pros attached to their play last year. Life will go on. This team will still be competitive. There's enough pieces around to compensate for that loss. And now we get to see what we were probably hoping to see in Jair Brown, right? With a third round pick. We just thought it was going to look more like Brown Hufanga versus Gibson Brown, right? Like when we got to this point of the season, I had expectations that Brown was going to play his way onto the field. Really did. Right. Gibson has still been steady Eddie, right? Like, I mean, he's been Mr. Consistent, and I love it. I expected a lot of dip from last year, his play, because I thought he balled out, had his best year of his career. And then, as we age, like, I struggle getting out of bed in the morning once in a while. Back in the day, I used to get out with a little like spring in my step, so you just expected that. But now we're going to see what you have in the Rook and what you invested that draft capital in. But it's a loss, Steph. Don't get me wrong. I hate not seeing number 29 out there, the hair flowing and him getting after the quarterback and making hits. I love everything about it, but we're really more saddened because it's just like a piece of the pie that's not going to arrive to the party. The truth is the loss of Hufanga is not going to actually make or break this team's season. And I believe that, right? Like, I think now it's more like if it was number 97 down, 54 down, and you wanted to, the sky is falling and the world is coming to an end, I get it. I probably feel the exact same way, but I just don't feel the same way about this injury. And I wish him speedy recovery, all the nine, like, I'm going to miss him, but show goes on.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, I appreciate that perspective. It's not the one I was expecting, but I think that's just the nature of the NFL, right? Like, there's going to be injuries, and as a team, you have to be ready to just say, hey, that isn't gonna make or break us. Next man up. That's just how the mentality has to be. So I mean, I don't think it's totally wrong to say that. And I think you're right. I think, the team drafted Jair Brown for a reason. Maybe they did think at some point he would get some opportunity this year. Maybe they didn't envision it happening this way, but that I think Jair Brown's going to be able to learn and be able to lean on some of these veterans on this team the same way that Hufanga did when he was coming along, right? So I think at the end of the day, it could be good for this defense, and we'll just see what Jair Brown brings. We got a little glimpse of it in the game on Sunday. So let's just go ahead and jump right into 49K player of the week, because there were a lot of really great performances, and I think a lot that kind of rival each other. And so I tweeted at you, I was like, this is going to be a really competitive 49K player of the week voting. So let's get into some of our nominees, and I'm going to let you start, Weston. Who's your first candidate?
I almost feel bad, Steph. This is your show. This is your platform. You let me tag along for the ride, and I'm going to steal the thunder, and I'm going to go with the low-hanging fruit, and it's BCB, Mr. Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
There's just, how is it not? You know what I mean? 21 of 25, 333 through the air, 3 touchdowns, average 13.3. Average 13.3 per an attempt. And the most important element of this, even though I still don't even know how they grade this thing, is a perfect 158.3 QB rating for the game. Yep. If you watch the game long enough and stuck around, you heard it mentioned 64 times that it was last done by Joe Montana and Steve Young in the same year in 1989. When I was a handsome 7-year-old man. That's how long we've been waiting on.
You were a man at 7? That's impressive.
I was a man out the womb, Steph,
That is impressive, man. But Brock Purdy was a man too. He definitely looked like a grown man out there on Sunday. Man, what a performance from him. I mean, I think every week you say to yourself, is this Brock Purdy's best performance? Like, is this his best game? Was that his best throw? I mean, certainly that 76-yard touchdown to Brandon Ayuk is up there with them. And that one traveled, I think, Andrew Pasquini, the homie, he
So funny.
calculated the air yards. He said it was 52 air yards to Brandon Ayuk. And so for all the people who say like he can't throw downfield, all these things, that was a beautiful ball and it was a dot. It was right where it needed to
Yep.
be. You didn't see Ayuk make any, significant adjustment to the football. I mean, that's what Purdy's doing right now. So yeah, he's
It's
also the first quarterback to throw for 300 or more yards in back-to-back home games since Jeff Garcia did it in the year 2000. And I feel old now saying that, but man, it's been a minute since the 49ers have had a quarterback this good, right?
for me, it's the manner and the style in which he does it, right? Like he doesn't really, even when things aren't going well, he doesn't really give you this like rattled, perception. I think the 158.3 is just like the exclamation point, right? Like the cherry on top. Like I'm not even confident how they like truly score this because at one point Baker Mayfield had a higher QBR than he did in the game, or rating in the game, and I was like, this doesn't even compute and make sense. The stats don't align. His team's not even winning. It is what it is. It's just like a flair stat for me, but it's the layered throws. Like, yes, we talked about the deep ball to Ayuk, like that loft, that arc, but he is something special with getting this ball over the depth of the linebackers into those crossing routes, whether it's Ayuk or Kittle coming across the field, even Debo a couple times, watching him get out of the pocket, buy time, enough time to plant his feet instead of even on like when they'll have Skittle, my mom calls him Skittle. Now she got me calling him Skittle. When Kittle's coming across the formation in motion and is right out to the flat and he's booting around, even the poise just like set the feet, don't rush it. Like, let's not make this an arm only throw. And then for me, what told me that this was his best game, and this is going to sound crazy, is I saw learning take place right before my eyes. It was early in this game. He tried to get out of the pocket and he got shoestring tackled. It was a sack, right? One of the sacks that you talked about.
Yeah.
And he was going to the ground and you saw him almost think about shoveling that ball forward. And that's either going to be a fumble or that's going to be intentional grounding. And he didn't. And he took the sack. And I was like, there we go. We are learning from mistakes and what we've seen on tape and what we're being coached. It's progression. That's all I want for my quarter. Progression. Get better game by game as this season goes on. I couldn't help myself. You gave me the podium first. I was going right for the meat, Mr. Brock Purdy.
I mean, I like it, man. Brock Purdy's on the thumbnail of this video. He's in the title of it in this podcast. So we're gonna roll with it. I like it. And yeah, he had the type of performance that definitely warrants that type of excitement and wanting to bring him up, right? Just the ability to keep his eyes downfield, the way he extends plays. It's always debated, what is Brock Purdy doing for this team really by people like outsiders, national media, casuals, they're like, well, he's just benefiting from Kyle Shanahan, the playmakers. Yeah, he's benefiting, but he's also bringing his own skill set to the table that is elevating this offense too. And I think that's the difference between Purdy and maybe some other quarterbacks that we've seen in this offense. So Brock Purdy definitely deserves the nomination this week. I'm glad you said it. Look, I wanna go with something that maybe isn't so obvious for this next one, but
Am I rubbing off on you, Steph?
Well, no, I am not voting for Jake Moody. All right, I'm not doing that. But we were just talking about him, and he filled in for an injured Talanoa Hufanga. He only played less than 2 quarters in this game, right? Because he came in after the injury. But he finished with 4 tackles, 3 pass breakups, and an interception in his first game action, by the way. Jair Brown, Mr. Jair Brown. And I mean, I don't think we can ignore the fact too that he was put into some high pressure moments. Like he had to cover Mike Evans in the red zone on a 4th and 4. He didn't interfere with him at all. Also, he kind of came back to this type of performance after giving up the touchdown. I think was it to Cade Otton or
Yep.
the tight end, right? Yeah, up the seam, kind of froze Brown in his place a little bit, but he was able to kind of break away from that. He didn't let it affect his confidence clearly. And he has a knack for the ball too, as you guys saw in the interception that he had. There's a lot of DBs, some veteran DBs that probably wouldn't even be able to make that because like he went out and got it and extended his body for that one. And so there's a reason that at Penn State last 2 years he had the most interceptions of any player, right? So any collegiate player. So Jair Brown, I think I got to give him some flowers for that performance, and I'm putting him up for 49K player of the week.
I agree. I agree he belongs in at least this evening's conversation, given the scenario in which he stepped into. If you were not paying attention close enough during the game and you were only listening to Darryl Johnston, you would think that one big play that he gave up was literally the first snap that he was there, because they're like, oh, look, they just started attacking the guy who's filling in for Hufanga. And you're like, dude, he's been in there for a half a quarter before this play even took place. Yeah. So it's funny how commentators can skew your perception of how a player is actually playing. But I think he showed some of the things that got us all excited about the pick in the first place. Just a knack for being around the football, whether it's finding the ball carrier, finding the guy with the ball in his hands, or just finding the ball when it's in the air. I think I always say luck favors the prepared, right? So hey, that Cade Otton one that you mentioned, Cade Otton catches, if he doesn't bobble that, we're talking about a touchdown. We're not even talking about this play, but that's why you play a play all the way through the whistle, right? And you're in the right step and you still go attack and you still lay that hit. I was blown away when they were like, oh, I know what a good idea is. Let's just leave this rookie who's not even warmed up in this game yet in single coverage against Mike Evans in the red zone, who's only maybe the best red zone threat in the NFL, right? Didn't seem to add up. But to me, that says, you know what? We're going to call the plays, and whoever's body is there, and that's confidence in your player. I think that some of the things that I liked were actually earlier in the game when he got in was just finding the ball carrier. He might not have been making the tackle, but he was certainly one of the 2 or 3 that were there, stopping the run and wrapping up and, changing their forward progress and things of that nature. And I don't know, I'm excited. I don't want to downplay Huff's injury because he's not at Huff's level, but they have a very similar skill set, in my opinion, right? Opportunistic, can find the ball carrier, can find the ball. I don't think this man shies away from contact. So if you want to bring him down to the line of scrimmage, you want to send him on a blitz, I think he'll fare well. I'm genuinely excited, but I temper that excitement go forward because, he's still a rookie. I remember last year with Huff, right? His first year as a full-time starter, right? There were moments that weren't so great.
Yes.
So those moments will come. Can you overcome them is the way that I look at it. But yeah, he played a great game considering the magnitude of the game in which he entered. So yeah, I love it.
Yep. Excited to see more of him in the future. Yeah, he's gonna have to grow up really quick within this defense, and I'm sure we can expect to see opposing offenses target him just to see what he's made of, until we get that answer. So, Weston, who's your next nominee for 49K Player of the Week?
I'm gonna go away from maybe the obvious because I think we have a couple names we can come back to round us out.
Don't worry about it.
I'm gonna say Arik Armstead.
Yeah, I like that one.
12 pressures, Steph.
Insane.
12. That's a ridiculous stat, by the way, in a single game. I think people understand how many pressures 12 pressures that equated to 10 hurries, right? He was the highest rated, essentially second highest, but again, how they scale these things versus Fred Warner, but a 91.2 pressure grade. He had the sack, he had 3 tackles, he had a tackle for a loss. He just seemed to be involved in every play, right? Whether he was in the QB's face, pushing his man into the quarterback and forcing the quarterback to step up or step out right into the arms of another awaiting defender for a cleanup sack. I think for Armstead, this was his most complete game that I've
Yeah.
seen, maybe potentially in the last season and a half. To me, I watched the game again this morning really early. I was up, I couldn't sleep, and I put it back on replay, and I was like, damn, 91 is just like jumping off at me. Like, I feel like I see him and only him on the field right now. I just thought he played a hell of a football game.
And that's crazy because I feel like the Bucs, they kind of have a pretty decent offensive line. So for Eric Armstead to be doing that too, even more impressive. Did you mention his sack as well? He had a sack too.
Yeah, I said the one sack. Yeah.
Okay. My bad.
No,
But yeah, going back to the pressures, 12 in a game. His previous best for pressures and hurries in a game was in week 1 of 2021 against the Lions. He had 9 pressures and 8 hurries. This game he had 12 and 10. Like even that, like, he beat his previous best by a significant amount. So Eric Armstead, I mean, we love to see it because there's a lot of people who need to feel like vindicated by Eric Armstead and what he's able to do. Like, okay, if he fills the stat sheet, I feel better about Armstead, which, like, he does make an impact outside of these numbers. But this was a type of performance that really, like, vindicates the type of impact that he has
Totally.
on this defensive line, the type of impact he could have on a game. And so it was just great to see out of him. And I hope, I don't know if it directly correlates with Chase Young being out there, but I'm just happy to see Armstead and, even Bosa getting some action these past couple weeks because they're going to need it, going into this stretch of the season here. So happy for Armstead.
And
Sure.
to that last point, Steph, like, we've been talking about the Hufanga injury and Jair Brown stepping up. You know how you mask that? You continue to get pressure, right? What made Jair Brown's like PBU look so impressive on Mike Evans? It was an errant throw, but it was because there was pressure in Baker's face and he couldn't step into the throw and had to put it up. That is a defensive back's best friend, is a pass rush, and doesn't always have to get home. Disrupt the throw. Don't let them get a full throwing motion, throw off their heels, whatever it is, right? So this all bodes well at a very thankless position. Nobody loves their D tackles, right? It's not the most attractive, unless you're Aaron Donald, Javon Hargrave, maybe Defoe back in the day. Like, most people don't know the names of their defensive tackles, but they can tell you who their edge rushers are. But big game from Armstead.
Yeah, I love it. Want to see more of it. We love that for Armstead. Now, I am going to go back to the offense for a bit, and a guy who had maybe his best game as a pro as well, Brandon Ayuk. I mean, what an incredible performance from Ayuk on Sunday. He accounted for 156 yards and a touchdown, including, the 76-yarder that Brock Purdy threw to him. He's averaging 19.3 yards per catch. And I mentioned this in an earlier show. Nearly 90% of his catches are going for a first down. That's crazy. That's crazy. Like, he's moving the chains. He's become like this downfield guy for the 49ers. And that's something the 49ers haven't had. Like, I don't remember the last time they had like a downfield threat. But Brandon Ayuk is kind of becoming that guy for this team. Sure, like, maybe he's not the kind of guy who's going to consistently be scoring like a deep touchdown. He's not a Tyreek Hill or anything like that. He's not like a burner. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean, I think he can operate at any level of the field. We already know he can get open against pretty much anyone. And right now, the chemistry that he's built with Brock Purdy is starting to show each and every week, right? So I'm excited for Brandon Ayuk this season. I mean, I think everything that he's, like, all the previous years, he's kind of been building towards this moment, right, for him. And so I'm really excited for him. I think he's on pace to finish the year with a little over 1,400 yards. I think, like, David Lombardi said a little over 1,500 yards. I don't know who's right, because Nick Wagner said 1,400 in any case, that's the most that a 49ers, wide receiver has had in a really long time, right? I don't probably
Since
since
T.O.,
since T.O. probably. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say,
you
right?
know?
So yeah, I mean, it's great to have Brandon Ayuk in the helm. People were trying to trade him away. People were trying to let him go in the off season before the season has even ended. Like, come on, people, let's just enjoy what Brandon Ayuk is doing for this team each and every week. And if it's putting up over 150 yards, I think we could safely say he's going to be a 49K player of the week candidate many more weeks for this show. But for week 11, I have him on here.
I mean, just a hell of a game. You mentioned 19 plus yards per reception on the year, 31 yards per reception yesterday. He's just always
Crazy.
open. He's just always open. It's just, does Brock have enough time? And that's a whole nother problem we'll talk about. Does he have enough time to get to him the progression and get the ball to him? And what I think is so crazy is how far we've come from like the Ayuk and Kyle's doghouse years, right?
Yeah.
To like where we are now, where Kyle's dialing up the plays for him, right? Like he is option one. They showed it a whole bunch, but
Yeah.
when they sent him across the motion, send them across the formation in motion, they bow them out and then bow them all the way back across. Like that takes a long time to develop. And if you can get that time, I mean, there's nobody around this guy. Like
Yeah.
nobody. It's incredible how wide open he is at all times on the field. He's by far and away. And again, this is not a knock on number 19, but Brandon Ayuk is the best wide receiver on this football team. And it would be a drastic mistake to not do everything you can to re-sign him going into next season. Drastic
I agree.
mistake.
Oh, I agree 100%. That's a whole nother topic, but
Yeah.
I'm with you. Who's your next nominee here?
I'm torn. I'll stay offense.
Okay.
85.
Yeah.
George Kittle, 8 for 89 in the TD. Another one where you talk about his catches just seem to be like well-timed. The one that stands out to me might not have looked like much, but it was actually right before the Ayuk touchdown, right? Where you're back up against the goal line, and other ones where he comes across the formation, you quickly get it out to him. He just seems to be that guy. And I've talked about this before with you, Steph, and you've agreed, but the offense just looks different when 85 gets 5+ touches in a game. He's special with the ball in his hands. He's physical. They tend to go for first downs or big plays as well. And then we talk about what Brock's getting really good at, those layered throws, getting over. You start hitting Kittle, and he's another one you can hit over the middle of the field, but you start hitting him a little closer to the line of scrimmage on those things. What does it really actually do? Brings the linebackers closer to the line of scrimmage, and then that throw over top or in the second level just gets a little easier for your quarterback as well. To me, it's no shock that Kittle has had two of his best games these last 2 weeks, and look how the offense has looked, and look at the result of that game as well.
I was just saying in the show earlier that it feels like when Kittle is involved, it almost feels like a bonus for this offense, and it just adds that little extra oomph to the offense and the game for the 49ers, that it's like a spark, right? And it kind of feels weird when they're not tapping into that, right? Like when we're seeing games where he's barely getting any targets, things like that, which we have seen those weird stretches, right? It's just odd, but when he gets back involved, it's like, there we go. The offense, it feels like it just hits like another level. And it's just another playmaker on this field that can make a big impact on the game. I mean, he had 8 catches, 89 yards, touchdown. It is nothing too major, but I mean, he's a chain mover as well. 5 of those catches went for a first down. And again, it just feels like a bonus having him involved. And I'm glad the 49ers were kind of forced to rediscover him when Debo was out, but they've kept him involved even when Debo's come back. And I love that because it's just another guy that defenses have to account for. And again, that opens things up for other guys. So I kind of feel like, we're seeing a lot of Kittle lately. Maybe, in the coming weeks, maybe we see more Debo. I don't know. Like because you never know. Like it takes sometimes a couple of games to set up someone else kind of exploding for some plays,
The,
right? And that's just how this offense works.
this is the mastery of what is Kyle Shanahan or Andy Reid or all your top play callers in this league. They put things on tape and they put a large enough sample size that it's no secret that like the MVP talks around McCaffrey have slowed down and the production has not been the same as it was through the first 5 weeks because the tape is there and it says, oh, I'd rather number 13 beat me than number 23 beat me. There's going to be enough games where you're going to say, we got to take 85 out of the game. And then you forget about 19, right? Like it's just the way that it goes. But that is like the benefit of having this embarrassment of riches, you know?
It's like he's training defenses and defensive coordinators. He's hanging the carrot in front of them. And,
little puppet master just pulling
exactly.
Strings, you know? Like you joked about it, right? And everybody joked about it yesterday, like the whole Elijah Mitchell thing, right? Like it's just, you guys don't want him in there? No problem. I'm just going to run him. You know what I mean? Like
for a whole series.
Yeah. And then next
runs in a row.
It'll be Mason, right? Like it's just the way it's wild, but you can only do that when you have players at those positions, you know?
Yeah,
who you got?
Absolutely. Is it okay? Yeah, I forgot. Kittle was your vote. I did have him in mind too, so glad we got that one out. This is my final one here, but it's a good one. And it was his birthday yesterday, and he had a great game. Fred Warner. Dude was on a tear, man. Like he had 12 tackles, a batted pass, a pass breakup, a hurry, a sack, 7 stops, only 20 yards allowed in his coverage. I mean, he was doing anything and everything. We already know Fred Warner does a whole lot for this team, but I feel like that stat line right there really just shows how many different facets of the defense he can contribute to. And I mean, it's just great to see out of the best linebacker in the game, right? Again, like we can do this maybe every week for Fred Warner. And so that he's definitely my vote. Well, not my vote, but one of my candidates for 49K Player of the Week. And the forced fumble. Sorry.
And the forced fumble. Yeah, you're right.
Man, how did I forget that?
It's funny. Like, yeah, I agree. We could probably say this every week about Fred, but I think it was really important this week. Like, it was just, it just felt on a bigger stage in the sense of like, this was a must-win game. This is like, when you look at the schedule ahead, this is not one you could have afforded to like drop because there's going to be a difficult stretch here. You know, specifically 4 of the next 5 games are not going to be, cakewalks. But what do we talk a lot about in the losses? God, they just feel like a step or 2 behind, right? It looks slower. It looks sluggish. Fred Warner looked everything but slow, yesterday. If I had to knock him for anything, like, why are you getting PI in the end zone, dude, and letting him score that early? But, like, by the way, that wasn't even in the end zone. I think they rectified it and said at the 1, or it would have been at the 1 anyway. Did it really matter? But it just made me mad when they're like in the end zone. I was like, who's watching this game? But in any case, he's a tone setter. He's just an absolute tone setter. This is what we were saying before. Like, yeah, losing Huff stinks, but it ain't anything like losing 54 and what he brings to that defense and to this team. And he's on my list too, Steph. It was just a matter of I was the one who got to lob him out there or you at this point, but like it was really obvious like how critical he is to the success of this defense.
Yeah, and I want to say that a big part of the reason we didn't see Chris Godwin all that much is because guys like Fred Warner and even Dre Greenlaw, honorable mention for him too, were just crowding the intermediate levels of the field as they always do, right? Rachaad White as well, who they like to involve heavily in their pass game, had 6 catches, just 28 yards. Godwin, 6 catches, 39 yards. So I think that had a big, guys like Fred Warner being in the mix and limiting those guys.
Yeah, I mean, did Godwin even have a catch in the first half? I don't even think he did. Evans had 1, and it was for a touchdown. Like you said, I mean, Rachaad White is usually a pretty big focal point in this past game, and that was taken away. And it's like anything. You start taking away your bags of tricks. What do you do now? And that's what Fred Ward. He's like he is the equalizer. Like he is the ultimate equalizer on the defense side of the ball.
All right. Do you have any other nominees?
No, can I do like an honorable mention? And I'm going to be generic here. I'm going to say the entire defensive line. I think the team, if I remember correctly, accounted for. Here, I could probably just look at this, right? Pass rush accounted for 38 total pressures. The defensive line specifically, anybody who lines up on that front four, responsible for 32 of those 38 pressures. Nice. That is a lot of pressure on a defense. I don't know what else. Like that's just living in their backfield. That's just disrupting things. And I honestly look, they're going to play better offensive lines along the way. I get that. But early in this edition of Chase Young, right? Like you're seeing it gel, you're seeing it come to fruition. So thought they all played well. Everybody contributed, right? Chase had 5, Hargrave had 4, Bosa had 9, Armstead had 12. Farrell gets in the game. Kinlaw gets in on the action a little bit. Like that's just a lot of pressure from your guys, and we all know what they have invested in that defensive line. So it's nice to see it kind of pan out to go with the 6 sacks in the game or whatever it amounted, 5 sacks, whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice to see. And it's part of the reason why the 49ers haven't needed to blitz all that much. They're finally getting pressure with the guys they have up front. And, it's nice to see. That's part of the reason we've seen this defense as a whole kind of return to form, right?
Yep.
So, big reason for those guys up front. Credit to them. Nice honorable mention right there. I'm trying to get the screen up with our candidates up on the screen. It's just loading and it's taking a while. So
the wheel of death.
Oh, here it is. All right. So here's who we have for 49K Player of the Week candidates for Week 11. Brock Purdy, Jair Brown, Eric Armstead, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Fred Warner. You've heard all the great things we've had to say about these players up to this point in this episode. Now, your turn to vote in the comments. Let us know who you think should be 49K Player of the Week for Week 11. In the meantime, as you guys vote, me and Weston are going to put some guys on notice.
That's still allowed after a W, I think.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I just curious who you're thinking.
Thinking the entire offensive line, if I'm being realistic here, especially Spencer Burford. Okay. Here's my big problem with this, and this goes back to what I was talking about, like how the run game has suffered. But pass blocking, I have a real issue when at the end of the day, like your best, highest rated pass blocker for the game is Christian McCaffrey. It's no wonder this man can't come off the field. He is outstanding in pass pro. And anybody who says otherwise is just not watching and just wants to chip at somebody because we all exist, right? Like, my kryptonite was Derek Jeter. I know how good he was, but I just hated him. So, like, I chipped at everything when he did wrong. But that being said, like, Christian McCaffrey, like, I know we're like, give him a break, get him off the field, do all this, but he literally does everything for you. Like, he catches the ball out of the backfield. He's your best running back. He's arguably in your top 3 wide receivers, and he plays running back. And week after week, he's your most efficient pass blocker. And my God, he's just not afraid to get in the mix, and he sticks with the blocks and he does those things. Chris, you know what? I'm not going after the offensive line. I'm going to go after Chris Forrester in this one and say, you got to get more. Okay. You got to get more. Got to get more from these guys. And hopefully it looks a little bit better, because here's what's going to happen. Banks is going to come back eventually, and they're going to slide Feliciano out. And I think, unfortunately for Spencer Burford, it's probably the end of his run, at least in the 2023 campaign, if I had to guess. And I like him. I like rooting for him. It's just, Steph, they had him at a 15. 15 was his PFF pass block grade yesterday. 15.
Ooh, that's bad. I was afraid of that matchup because he was going to have to go up against Vita Vea. I knew it. Writing was on the wall. I'm sure the 49ers can't wait for Aaron Banks to come back so they can, move Feliciano over there. I mean, do you feel like anything of the offensive line had to do with the fact that they're dealing with Feliciano being at left guard? They're not at full squad. I know McKivitz played in this game, but he was on the injury report throughout the week. Like, I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt.
And you're right in giving them benefit of the doubt, right? Because the truth is, like, man for man, person for person, like, sometimes the individual that lines up across from you is just better than you, right? Is bigger than you, stronger than you, faster than you, whatever it might be. And you can only do what you can do. So I'm not going to ever knock anybody's effort, right? This is the NFL. Like, defenses get paid too, right? And they have good players as well, like a Vita Vea, who eats everybody alive. It's not just this game for me. It's the last 5 games, the 3 losses, and even against Jacksonville, it didn't look great at times. You know what I mean? It looked shaky, and some plays happen that, we're so short-sighted and we're like recency bias that you look at the score, you're like, we won, everything was perfect. And like, the truth is, like, no, like, you can glean a lot from that W, just like you could a loss. And, I just, they need more. Or the issue that, like, it's clearly not truly hindering the passing game because things are rocking and rolling there. But when it's taking away, like, okay, Trent Williams was the highest rated run blocker yesterday. Well, behind Juszczyk. But then it's like, it's not close really after that, right? And you see, like, steep drop off. If we can't run the football, you can kiss your Super Bowl hopes goodbye, because that's what this team was built to do, and to open up the passing game. That's all I'm asking. It's just, we need a little more. I just need a little. I can't be seeing 15s in the PFF grades.
Yeah, no, that's bad. That's pretty bad. No, I respect it. I also don't have one specific player to put on notice, and so it isn't as much as who I'm putting on notice, but what. And I'm kind of calling the entire team out for this right here. Just some of the little mistakes they can stand to improve. First of all, the penalties I still see as being a bit of an issue here. The 49ers had 7 penalties again on Sunday. They also had 7 the week prior. I don't have to tell you how bad they were penalties during the losing streak, but on Sunday, 7 penalties, 66 yards. They had more than the Bucs had, and the Bucs ranked 31st in the league in penalties per game. The Bucs, I think, only had like 3 or something like that. So something that the 49ers could continue to improve. I just haven't really seen the week-to-week improvement for the penalties quite yet. So I need to see it. Another thing, third downs. What happened? I mean,
taking the words right out of
4
my
of
mouth.
11. I mean, 4 of 10 on third downs. And as we mentioned earlier, their 4th down attempt wasn't successful either. They're only one of the day. That can stand to improve. I feel like last week was kind of more of the same for them. So, guys, you got to get this together. And I'm trying to look it up really quickly.
You have me laughing, Steph, because you say third down, and I'm like agreeing with you, but I'm also like, I'm looking at it on the opposite side. Defense on third down, like
we could probably say both.
Just needing to get off the field. Like, it just feels like it's and they're not like 3rd and 1s, right? Where they're getting the, whatever they call it, the brotherly shove, like for the first down or some QB sneak. No, it's 3rd and decent, 3rd and 7 pluses that they just seem to continuously be given up. And like, those kill you, like those kill you. You want to get off the field. You want to rest your defense. But I agree with you. 3rd downs on both sides of the ball need to be a little bit more efficient.
And I just looked it up. On offense, they were 4th of 12 last week too. So not great for the third downs. And last week in the red zone, they were 1 of 4. This week they struggled again. This week I was like, you know what? The Bucs have the best red zone defense, so I'll cut them some slack. But the Jaguars didn't. So, I mean, 2 weeks in a row now, the same type of struggles. So those are the things that need to improve during this tough stretch here, during the games against all the birds of the NFL.
The birds. It's the bird
Yeah,
week.
literally,
We're on the
like
bird
someone,
run. Yeah.
yeah, someone like posted the schedule for the next few weeks. It's just all the bird teams. So let's go hunting. And guys, if you haven't voted yet, please vote in the comments for 49K Player of the Week. We got a couple votes, but I see some of you guys are on and you're not voting. Help us out here. Weston, who is your vote for this week?
I led with them to start the show. It's Brock, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Yeah, I have a really tough time like coming off of Brock. Like not like I mean, I just have to. At the same time, like Armstead, that was his best game
In a
that he's
long
ever
time.
had.
Yeah.
Or ever. Like if you statistically, if you're looking at just like pressures and hurries alone. And then Ayuk, like that was also his best game of his career. So man,
Longest TD catch of the season in the NFL.
it's tough to beat out the quarterback in any type of like voting like this. So
That's
I
why
kind
the
of feel
kids play quarterback, Steph. They know what glory comes with it. That's why they all want to be
uh,
quarterback in the backyard, you know?
you know, I am gonna go with Purdy as well. But that just means that we have a tie, and
Oh,
then
every week.
we need a like tie. It had been a couple weeks since we had a tiebreaker, so we need someone to break up the tie between Brock Purdy, Fred Warner. Someone in the comments, please save us. But you know,
I got a
while
text from
someone,
somebody who's not commenting, and they
did
said
they?
Warner. They say Warner.
Did they?
Yeah.
Are you just making something up?
No, I'll show it to you if you want. It says Warner. They're like,
Okay, all right.
I won't embarrass this individual, but they're like, I don't know how to comment, so they text me instead. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, that's precious. All right. So then Fred Warner is our 49K Player of the Week for week 11 then in that case, and I mean he definitely did deserve it. That was he was all
Hell of
over
a
the
game.
place in this
Hell of a
game.
game.
It was his birthday, so you know, we got to give it to him too. Oh no, we got another vote in the 11th hour and Landon picks Purdy, so we're
No,
back at a
I will not
tie.
have my child mess this up for us. We've already made the announcement. We are Congratulations, Fred Warner. Thank you for listening to the show.
That's so funny. Hold on, my dad I think is trying to vote too. So I guess I'm finding people having a hard time like voting. But you know,
technology's a hell of a thing, isn't it, Steph?
yeah, I mean, I guess so. Maybe we'll blame YouTube, but you know, we appreciate you, all of you guys who help us vote every week and tune in every week. We love doing these shows; they're so much fun, and it's always great to have you guys involved in the comments. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. Not just mine, but Weston's channel as well. We really appreciate it. Weston, why don't you plug your channel really quick? Let people know what else you got going on this week.
Yeah, so we're talking football podcast. Some changes will come down the line, but that's where it is for now. And we're going to be talking a lot more 49er ball. You can catch me doing a little post game, a little pregame, what to expect, all that fun. But you know, Steph, I can't agree with you more. I just love doing this show, win or loss. I feel like we always have a lot of fun. We talk real ball, but sprinkle in our true selves in these conversations. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah, as do I. And we have a big game coming up on Thursday, but me and Weston are going to continue to do the show on Monday. We're going to enjoy the nice break after Thanksgiving. And so we'll have a lot of time to think about our candidates for next week. Make sure you guys join us then. But for now, have a good rest of your Monday, folks. Peace.